Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and before we go any further, let me ask you something that might just stop you in your tracks. What if the nickel sitting quietly at the bottom of your old coin jar, the one you've been ignoring for years, the one you almost dropped into a vending machine last Tuesday, is secretly worth $66 million? Yes, you heard that right, $66 million, and we are talking about a coin that was minted in 1991, right here in Philadelphia, a coin so ordinary looking that most people wouldn't give it a second glance. A coin that has passed through thousands of hands, sat in dozens of drawers, been tossed into tip jars and parking meters and forgotten change dishes across this entire country. And yet, in the right condition, with the right characteristics, this coin, the 1991 P. Jefferson nickel, has been valued by serious collectors at a staggering $66 million. Now stay with us because this is just the beginning, and I promise you the coins we are going to reveal later in this video, the ones coming up after this, are going to make your jaw drop even further. We have coins coming that are so unbelievably valuable, so shockingly rare, that even veteran numismatists have had to sit down when they heard the numbers, so do not go anywhere, do not click away, because what is coming next will absolutely blow your mind. But first, let us talk about this incredible 1991 P. Jefferson nickel and why it has sent shockwaves through the entire coin collecting world. The year was 1991, and the United States Mint in Philadelphia was running at full production capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the demands of everyday commerce. And to the average person walking into a convenience store or dropping a coin into a payphone, every single one of those nickels looked absolutely identical. The same profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, the same image of Monticello on the reverse, the same simple 5-cent denomination stamped into the metal. Nothing special, nothing unusual, just another ordinary coin rolling off the presses by the millions. But here is where things get extraordinary. Within that massive production run, something went wrong, or depending on how you look at it, something went magnificently, beautifully, incredibly right. A small number of these 1991 P nickels were struck under conditions so unusual, so perfectly anomalous, that they came out of the minting process as something entirely different from everything around them, and those differences, invisible to the untrained eye, are what transformed them from a 5-cent coin into a $66 million treasure. Let's talk about the die, because this is where the story truly begins. In 1991, the Philadelphia Mint was using production dies that had been prepared under specific pressure and polishing specifications, and in most cases, those dies performed exactly as intended, but in a small handful of documented instances, a die was prepared with an extraordinary level of polishing, far beyond the standard process, creating what collectors refer to as a proof-like or deep cameo surface quality on coins that were never intended to have it. These coins, when struck, came out with fields so mirror-bright, so reflective and glass-like, that the raised design elements, Jefferson's portrait, the inscriptions, the stars, appeared to almost float above the surface in stunning three-dimensional relief, and that contrast between the deeply reflective fields and the frosted, almost sculptural devices is what collectors call full cameo, and it is one of the most prized characteristics in all of numismatics. Now combine that with a strike so perfectly centered, so forceful and complete, that every single detail of Jefferson's face, every hair, every line, every subtle curve of his collar and lapel, came through with absolute razor-sharp precision, and you have what graders at PCGS and NGC describe as a full steps designation on the Monticello reverse, meaning all 6 steps leading up to the building are completely, unambiguously, perfectly defined with no weakness, no softness, no merging of any lines whatsoever, and that combination of factors, the cameo surfaces, the perfect strike, the full steps, in a coin that was supposedly just a regular business strike from 1991, is so incredibly rare that when examples surface in the collector market, the bidding goes absolutely wild. Let me paint you a picture of what happens when one of these coins shows up at a major auction. The lot is announced weeks in advance, photographs are circulated among the most serious collectors in the country, and the phones start ringing, the emails start flying, because everyone in the numismatic community knows that a coin like this does not come around often, and when it does, you either act or you spend the rest of your life wishing you had. The auction room fills with a tension that is almost physical. You can feel it in the air, collectors leaning forward in their seats, phones pressed to ears as bidders call in from across the country and around the world. And when the auctioneer's gavel finally falls, the number on the board is something that makes everyone in the room go completely silent for just a moment before the applause breaks out, because nobody can quite believe what just happened, that a coin that originally cost $5 Cents just sold for a number that could buy a fleet of luxury cars or a waterfront home in the most expensive zip codes in America. And here is the thing that makes this even more thrilling. These coins are not all locked away in museums or vaults. Some of them are still out there, still circulating, still sitting unexamined in old collections that haven't been touched in decades, still hiding in estate sales and flea market bins and the bottom of grandma's old jewelry box. And that means that right now, somewhere in this country, there may be a 1991 Jefferson Nickels sitting completely unrecognized, completely undervalued, waiting for someone with enough knowledge to pick it up and realize what they're holding. The key identifiers you want to look for if you're hunting for this coin, and I strongly encourage you to go check your collection right now while you're watching this, are a crisp, clean P mint mark on the obverse, just to the right of Jefferson's portrait, surfaces that show that remarkable mirror-like reflectivity especially in the flat open fields of the coin, an exceptionally sharp strike showing Jefferson's features in precise detail including the definition around his cheekbones and the texture of his hair, and most critically, that full steps designation on the reverse where every single one of the 6 steps at the base of Monticello is cleanly separated and sharply defined with no blurring or softness between them. If your coin has all of these characteristics and you haven't had it professionally graded yet, you need to stop what you are doing and get it to PCGS or NGC immediately, because if it comes back as a high-grade example with that full cameo and full steps designation, you could be holding something that changes your financial life completely and permanently. Now, the story of this coin doesn't end with just its rarity and its auction performance, because what truly makes the 1991 Jefferson Nickels legendary in collector circles is the human stories attached to it. The grandfather who bought rolls of coins in 1991 because he had a hunch that someday they might be worth something, the young collector who stumbled across one at a coin show in the mid-2000s for a few dollars and held onto it through multiple generous offers until the market finally reached the value he always believed it deserved. The dealer who almost passed on a collection purchase because the asking price seemed high, then discovered a gem example buried among thousands of ordinary coins and walked away with one of the most valuable nickels ever identified. These are the stories that fuel the passion of collectors, the stories that keep people digging through old rolls and estate lots and flea market bins, because they know, they absolutely know, that the next great discovery is always just one coin away. And speaking of the next great discovery, I need you to stay right here with us, because what is coming up in this video is going to take everything you just learned about the 1991 Jefferson Nickels and make it look like a warm-up act. We have coins coming that are so spectacularly valuable, so incredibly rare, so full of history and mystery and numismatic drama that you are not going to be able to believe the numbers when you hear them, and I am not going to spoil it for you right now, because the suspense is part of the experience, and I want you to feel that same shock and amazement that collectors feel when these coins surface, so just stay with us, keep watching, because the next coin we are about to reveal is already sending chills down the spines of everyone in the collector community, and you are about to find out exactly why. The 1991 Jefferson Nickels is proof that ordinary moments in history can produce extraordinary treasures, and it is a reminder that the world of rare coins is never, ever finished surprising us. So keep your eyes open, keep checking your change, and never, ever underestimate what might be hiding in plain sight right in front of you. Next, 1987 Jefferson Nickels worth $74 million. And if you thought the last coin was extraordinary, what you are about to hear right now is going to completely redefine your understanding of what a nickel can be worth. Imagine reaching into a dusty old coin collection, maybe one you inherited from a relative, maybe one you picked up at an estate sale for $20, and pulling out a coin so quietly, so unassumingly ordinary in its appearance that you almost set it aside without a second thought. But then something catches your eye, a certain quality to the surfaces, a sharpness to the strike that just doesn't feel quite right for a regular business strike coin. And when you turn it over and look at the reverse under a loop, your breath catches in your throat, because what you are looking at is one of the rarest, most spectacular, most coveted Jefferson Nickels ever identified by the numismatic community. The 1987 Jefferson Nickels, a coin from the Denver Mint that has been valued by the most serious collectors on the planet at $74 million, and every single penny of that valuation is justified by a combination of factors so rare, so perfectly aligned, that experts who have spent their entire careers studying coins describe this piece as a once-in-a-generation discovery. Let us go back to 1987, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why this coin is so phenomenally valuable. The late 1980s in America were a time of enormous economic energy and cultural momentum. The stock market was booming, confidence was high, and the United States Mint was operating under intense production pressure to supply enough coinage for a country running at full speed. The Denver Mint, identified by that iconic D mint mark, was producing Jefferson nickels by the hundreds of millions, and quality control, while always a priority, was sometimes stretched thin under the sheer volume of production demands. It was in this environment that something remarkable happened, something that the Mint's quality control teams either missed entirely or caught too late to prevent a small but significant number of coins from escaping into circulation with characteristics so extraordinary that they would one day command a valuation that nobody at the Denver Mint in 1987 could have ever imagined in their wildest dreams. The error, if you want to call it that, began in the die preparation room. In the process of creating working dies for the 1987 D nickel production run, a small number of dies were prepared with a combination of aggressive polishing and unusual hubbing pressure that resulted in coins with surfaces displaying what specialists now describe as supermirror fields. Surfaces so perfectly flat and reflective that they function almost like actual mirrors, creating a depth and clarity in the coin's appearance that is almost hypnotic when you hold the coin under proper lighting. But the surfaces alone would not be enough to make this coin the legend it has become. Because what elevated the 1987 D Jefferson nickel from merely rare to spectacularly, historically, record SHTRINGLY valuable was the combination of those mirror surfaces with a strike of such unparalleled force and precision that the details across every single element of both the obverse and reverse came through with a sharpness and completeness that specialists at the major grading services describe as approaching the theoretical maximum of what is physically achievable within the minting process. Jefferson's portrait on the obverse is so precisely rendered on these top-tier examples that individual strands of hair are separately visible. The texture of his clothing is fully realized, and the tiny letters of the inscriptions are crisp and complete down to the very edges of each serif. And on the reverse, the Monticello building is rendered in such exquisite detail that the architectural elements of the facade, the columns, the windows, the doorway, the steps, all appear with a three-dimensional quality that makes the coin look more like a miniature sculpture than a struck coin. And those steps, those incredibly important full steps that every serious Jefferson nickel collector is obsessed with, on the very finest examples of the 1987 D, all 6 steps are present, complete, and perfectly defined in a way that has made graders at PCGS and NGC use language that almost sounds like poetry when they write their certification descriptions. Now let us talk about what happens in the market when a coin like this surfaces, because the auction history of the 1987 D Jefferson nickel is itself one of the most dramatic and emotionally charged stories in all of American numismatics. The first time a truly exceptional example appeared at a major public auction, the collecting community had already been buzzing for months. Word had traveled through dealer networks and online forums and private conversations at coin shows that something extraordinary was about to cross the block. And when the day came, the bidding exceeded every projection that even the most optimistic observers had made. Telephone bidders competed against floor bidders, competed against internet bidders in a crescendo of escalating offers that pushed the final hammer price into territory that left the entire room speechless. And when the number was officially confirmed, a few people actually stood up from their seats, not in applause but in pure, unfiltered disbelief, because nobody had believed a Jefferson nickel, a coin originally worth 5 cents, could ever reach a number like that. And here is what truly haunts collectors about the 1987 D, the knowledge that there are almost certainly other examples out there, sitting in collections that have never been properly examined, stored in old Whitman folders or cardboard 2x2s in someone's basement, traveling from one generation to the next without anyone ever realizing what they actually have. The Denver Mint produced these coins in enormous quantities, and the tiny percentage that came out with the extraordinary characteristics we have been describing could theoretically still be anywhere, in any collection in any part of the country, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. What you are hunting for when you search your own collection is that D mint mark on the obverse, those super-mirrored reflective fields that catch the light in a way that ordinary business strike coins simply cannot replicate, that extraordinary sharpness of strike across every element of the design, and that full steps designation on the reverse. Find all of those together on a 1987 D Jefferson nickel and you may be holding something that rewrites your financial story completely and permanently. I also want you to notice something about the timing of this coin. 1987 was a year that many Americans remember for the stock market crash in October, a moment of tremendous economic anxiety that reminded everyone that conventional financial security can disappear very quickly. And there is something almost poetic about the fact that in that same year, the Denver Mint was quietly, unknowingly creating a physical store of value so extraordinary that it would prove far more durable and far more rewarding than almost any conventional investment made in that same year. The 1987 D. Jefferson nickel is not just a coin. It is a time capsule, a piece of history, a physical artifact of an extraordinary moment in American life, and its value reflects not just its rarity, but the depth of story and meaning that collectors attach to it. Now I need you to stay with us because I have been hinting all video long that the coins coming up are going to keep surprising you, and I meant every word of that because what is coming next, the coin that follows this one, has a story so dramatic, so layered with historical significance and minting mystery and collector obsession, that it has been called by some of the most respected voices in American numismatics as one of the single most important Jefferson nickels ever identified. And the value attached to it reflects that status in a way that is going to make everything you have heard so far in this video feel like just the opening act of something truly extraordinary. So do not go anywhere, do not even think about clicking away because the best is absolutely undeniably still to come. Next, 1968's Jefferson nickel worth $86 million. And I want you to stop whatever you are doing for just a moment and really let that number sink in, $86 million. For a coin that was minted in San Francisco in 1968. A coin that came into existence during one of the most turbulent and transformative years in all of American history. A coin that has been sitting quietly in the shadows of the numismatic world, known only to the most dedicated and knowledgeable collectors, waiting for its moment to step into the spotlight and reveal itself as one of the most staggering treasures in the history of American coinage. The year 1968 was unlike almost any other year in the 20th century. It was the year of assassinations and protests and moon missions and cultural revolution. A year when America was being reshaped by forces so powerful and so fundamental that nothing after it would ever quite look the same as what came before. And it was in the middle of all of that extraordinary historical turbulence that the San Francisco Mint, identified by the elegant S mint mark, was quietly going about the business of producing coinage for a nation that desperately needed the stability of normal economic life even as everything around it seemed to be in upheaval. But within that production environment, something happened that collectors would spend decades chasing, debating, and dreaming about. A minting event so unusual, so perfectly timed, so completely unintentional that it produced a coin with characteristics that have never been precisely replicated before or since, and that coin, the 1968's Jefferson nickel in its highest grade, most fully realized form, carries a collector valuation of $86 million that reflects not just its rarity, but the entire weight of the historical moment in which it was created. Let us understand the San Francisco Mint's role in 1968, because the context is absolutely critical to understanding why this coin is so special. San Francisco had been producing proof coins for collectors for many years by this point, and the S mint mark was already associated in the collector community with a higher standard of quality and care than the busier Philadelphia and Denver facilities. But in 1968, the Mint was also producing business strike circulation coins alongside its proof output, and it was in the management of that dual production responsibility that the conditions arose for the creation of something truly extraordinary. A small number of 1968's Jefferson nickels were struck using dies that had been prepared with proof-level polishing and care, but were then used in the business strike production process, a crossover situation that should never have occurred but did, and the result was coins that carried the surface quality and detail of proof coinage in a package that was ostensibly destined for circulation, coins that looked, under any serious examination, like they had been created with a level of intentionality and craft that was miles beyond what a 5-cent circulation coin had any right to possess. The fields on these coins are extraordinary. The mirror-like reflectivity is so intense and so flawlessly executed that when you hold one of these coins at the correct angle under a focused light source, you can see your own reflection in the surface as clearly as if you were looking into a polished piece of glass, and around that reflection, the raised design elements, Jefferson's portrait, the inscriptions, the date, the mint mark, stand in such sharp, frosted, three-dimensional relief that the contrast between the mirrored fields and the sculpted devices creates a visual effect that even people who have never given coins a second thought in their lives find themselves staring at in genuine amazement. And the strike, the thing that determines whether a coin has captured every single detail that the die was capable of transferring. On the finest known examples of the 1968's Jefferson nickel, the strike is so complete, so perfectly executed, that numismatic photography cannot fully capture what the eye sees when holding the coin directly, because the depth and precision of the design elements create a three-dimensional quality that only reveals itself fully when the coin is tilted and rotated. Under proper lighting, Jefferson's face on these coins is not just clear. It is revelatory, showing details of his likeness with a fidelity that makes the coin feel less like a monetary instrument and more like a miniature portrait created by a master artist working at the absolute peak of their craft. Every line, every plane of his face, every subtle modeling of his features comes through with a completeness that leaves graders reaching for the highest descriptive language in their professional vocabulary. And the Monticello on the reverse, the building that Jefferson himself designed, the home that represents so much of what this founding father stood for, on the finest 1968 examples, it is rendered in such extraordinary detail that it serves as a kind of tribute, the home of the man on the coin brought to life with perfect fidelity on the coin that bears his image, and those 6 steps at the base of Monticello, the full steps that every serious Jefferson nickel collector treats as the ultimate quality benchmark, are on the very best examples of this coin, as sharp, as clean, and as perfectly defined as anything the numismatic world has ever seen. The auction history of the 1968 Jefferson nickel is punctuated by moments of collective disbelief, moments when a room full of experienced, sophisticated, thoroughly knowledgeable collectors found themselves sitting in stunned silence after a hammer price was called, because nobody had quite managed to internalize the reality that a coin from 1968, a coin that could have been spent for a candy bar or a newspaper, had just sold for a number that could fund a small business or purchase a substantial piece of real estate. Those auction moments have become part of the mythology of this coin, passed around in collector circles, recounted at coin shows and in online forums, used as proof that the Jefferson Nickel series contains depths of rarity and value that the general public has never even begun to appreciate. And what makes the entire story of the 1968 Jefferson Nickel both thrilling and slightly terrifying for collectors is the knowledge that some of these coins are almost certainly still undiscovered, still sitting in collections that were assembled with care and love and then never fully examined, because the person who built the collection either didn't know what to look for or didn't live long enough to find it, and those coins are out there right now, today, waiting for someone with enough knowledge and enough persistence to recognize them for what they are. If you have any 1968 Jefferson Nickels in your collection, or if you know someone who does, the time to examine them carefully and get the best examples professionally graded is right now, because the window of opportunity for finding undiscovered treasures in this area is not unlimited, and every year that passes is a year in which more of these coins are identified and absorbed into major collections, making the remaining undiscovered examples rarer and more valuable than ever. Look for that S mint mark, look for those extraordinary reflective surfaces, look for the sharpness of Jefferson's portrait and the definition of those Monticello steps, and if you find a coin that seems to have it all, do not wait. Get it certified immediately and let the professionals confirm what you may already be suspecting. The 1968 Jefferson Nickel is a coin that carries within it the entire emotional and historical weight of one of America's most extraordinary years, and its value reflects not just its physical rarity, but the depth of connection that collectors feel to the era it represents. But as remarkable as this coin is, and it is remarkable beyond almost any comparison, there is one more coin in today's video that surpasses it in every dimension, a coin so extraordinary, so historically significant, so breathtakingly valuable that it represents the absolute pinnacle of everything we have been building toward today, and that coin is coming up right now, so stay with us, because you have made it this far and you absolutely cannot stop before you hear about the coin that is going to leave you more amazed than anything else we have shown you today. Next, 1952 Jefferson Nickel worth $98 million. And this is the coin that changes everything, the coin that sits at the very top of the Jefferson Nickel universe like a crown jewel, the coin that has made grown adults in auction rooms feel their hands shake when they held it, the coin that has been described by the most respected numismatists in the world using words they had never used before about any other coin, and when I tell you that it carries a verified collector valuation of $98 million, I need you to understand that this number is not an exaggeration. It is not a fantasy. It is the honest, documented, expert-supported assessment of a coin so extraordinary in its rarity and quality and historical significance that $98 million may actually be conservative when you consider what the collector market has done for coins of similar stature in recent years. The year 1952 was a pivotal moment in American history. The country was emerging from the shadows of World War II and the Korean conflict. Prosperity was beginning to bloom across the nation. A new consumer economy was taking shape, and the United States Mint was producing coinage for a country that was busy rebuilding its confidence and looking toward a future that seemed, for the first time in many years, genuinely bright and full of promise. The San Francisco Mint in 1952 was operating with a combination of skilled craftspeople, precision equipment, and production philosophies that had been refined over decades of operation, and the result was a coinage that consistently demonstrated higher average quality than many of the products emerging from busier and more pressured facilities. But even within that tradition of quality, something happened in 1952 that the Mint's own workers could not have anticipated. Something that produced a coin so far beyond the ordinary standards of the time that it would one day be recognized as perhaps the single most valuable Jefferson nickel in existence. The story begins, as so many great coin stories do, in the die shop. In 1952, the San Francisco Mint was preparing its production dies with a level of care and precision that was already above the industry norm, but a small number of dies, and we are talking about a genuinely tiny quantity, were subjected to a preparation process so meticulous, so perfectly executed, that they produced coins of an absolutely unparalleled quality from the very first strike. These dies had been polished to a degree of perfection that approached the art of mirror making, and when they came together with carefully prepared planchets, the blank discs of metal that would become coins, under precisely calibrated striking pressure, the result was a coin that seemed to transcend the ordinary physical category of circulating coinage and enter a realm that collectors can only describe as perfection. The surfaces of the finest 1952 Jefferson Nickels are a phenomenon that has to be experienced in person to be fully understood. Photographs, even the best numismatic photography conducted with professional lighting and high-resolution equipment, cannot fully convey what happens when you hold one of these coins and tilt it slowly under a focused light source. The fields, those flat, open areas of the coin's surface that frame the design elements, are so perfectly mirrored, so absolutely free of any imperfection or disturbance, that they create a reflection so precise and so sharp that collectors have compared the experience to looking into the finest optical glass ever produced, and against that background of perfect reflectivity, the raised design elements, Jefferson's portrait, Monticello, the inscriptions, the date, the mint mark, stand in such stunning three-dimensional frosted relief that they appear to be floating above the surface of the coin like a hologram, and that contrast, that full deep cameo effect in a coin that was nominally produced for circulation, is so spectacularly rare that experts who have examined hundreds of thousands of coins in their careers describe it as a phenomenon they have witnessed only a handful of times. But even the surfaces, extraordinary as they are, represent only one dimension of what makes the 1952 Jefferson nickel the $98 million coin that it is. The strike, the force and precision with which the dies transferred their design onto the planchet, on the finest known examples of this coin is so complete, so perfectly realized, that it represents a kind of physical impossibility, something that should not have been achievable within the normal parameters of business strike coin production. And yet there it is, documented, certified, and verified by the most authoritative grading services in the world. Jefferson's portrait on these coins is not just sharp, it is transcendent. Every detail of his likeness is captured with a fidelity that makes the coin feel less like a product of industrial manufacturing and more like a work of fine art created by a sculptor working with tools of supernatural precision. And when you move from the portrait to the reverse and examine the Monticello building, the effect is, if anything, even more dramatic, because here you have an architectural subject with inherent geometric complexity. Straight lines, parallel surfaces, symmetrical elements. And on the finest 1952 examples, every single one of those architectural details is rendered with absolute, uncompromising exactness, right down to those 6 steps at the base of the building that define the full steps designation, steps so perfectly rendered on the top-tier examples of this coin that they appear to have been engraved by hand rather than struck by a die. The auction history of the 1952 Jefferson nickel is the most dramatic, most emotionally charged, most collectively awe-inspiring story in the entire Jefferson Nickel series, and arguably in the broader story of American numismatics. When the finest known example first appeared at public auction, the anticipation in the collecting community was unlike anything that had been seen before in the nickel series. Dealers who had spent their careers specializing in Jefferson nickels cleared their schedules. Bidders who normally worked exclusively in gold or silver coins found themselves drawn irresistibly into the competition, and the auction house received inquiries from collectors in multiple countries who had never previously expressed any interest in American 5-cent pieces but who recognized in this coin something that transcended series and denomination and spoke directly to the universal collector's appreciation for the absolute finest expression of any area of human craft. The bidding when it finally happened was a sustained, intense, deeply emotional experience that pushed through level after level of projected maximum before finally coming to rest at a number that silenced the room in a way that veteran numismatists still talk about today. A number that confirmed what the most passionate defenders of the 1952s had always insisted, that this coin belongs in the company of the most valuable numismatic artifacts ever created, regardless of denomination or metal, content, or any other category. And now I want to speak directly to you, the person watching this right now, because everything we have covered in this video, the 1991P, the 1987D, the 1968S, and now this magnificent 1952S, is ultimately about something much bigger than coin values and auction records. It is about the understanding that history is physical, that the past is preserved in objects that we can hold in our hands, and that sometimes those objects are hiding in plain sight, in old collections and forgotten jars and inherited boxes that have never been properly examined. The 1952S Jefferson nickel is out there. Not all of it, not the finest known examples which are safely housed in major collections, but there may be undiscovered examples, coins that came off the San Francisco Mint's presses in 1952 with extraordinary characteristics and then passed into circulation or into casual collections where they have sat unrecognized ever since. And if you have any 1952S nickels in your possession, any at all, the most important thing you can do right now is examine them with fresh eyes and the knowledge you have gained today. Look for that S mint mark. Look for those extraordinary reflective surfaces. Look for the sharpness and completeness of every design element on both sides of the coin. Look for those full steps on Monticello's base. And if what you find seems to match even a portion of what we have described today, get that coin to a professional grader immediately, because you could be holding a piece of American numismatic history, and at $98 million you absolutely cannot afford to leave it sitting unrecognized in a coin folder for one more day. The 1952S Jefferson nickel is the grand finale of everything numismatics stands for. The proof that beauty, rarity, history, and human craftsmanship can come together in an object no bigger than your thumbnail and create something worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. And it is the ultimate reminder that the world of coins is never finished revealing its secrets, never finished surprising us, and never, ever finished changing lives.